I don't care what you're arguing about with your spouse. I care about how you're arguing. Okay, like that's not completely true. I do care about the what, right? I care about the hurt. I care about the past experiences. I care about what has brought you here to couples therapy. But much of the time, the thing you're fighting about is only as important as its ability to be a doorway into something deeper, okay? It's about patterns, okay? How you argue is more important than what you argue about. And the hurts or the needs that repeatedly come up is a really good indicator of that. Think about it, right? One couple can argue about parenting for 5 minutes, figure out a good compromise, and be good. And then another can argue about the same exact topic, end up sleeping in separate rooms, wondering if they married the wrong person. Why is that? Well, because they actually aren't talking about parenting at all, and neither of them in the couple even knows it. Today, I want to dive into what couples therapy actually looks like, past the illusions you have in your head about it, past the ideology that it's going to fix everything in your relationship and get along perfectly, and past the hope that your spouse will have an eye-opening epiphany and change their ways for the better, which is likely just your own preference on how to do things. Because listen, if that's what you're hoping for in couples therapy, you've already brought a big threat into this relationship: contempt. So you likely think that your partner is the client in these sessions, or maybe you think that you're the client in these sessions. But frankly, neither of you are. In couples therapy, the relationship itself is the client, and my job is to reduce the suffering of my client. My name is Mike Shahade. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a couples therapist here in Michigan, and welcome to Your Brain. All right, listen, couples therapy is not court. When a couple comes into my office, they rarely say this out loud, but they are almost always praying for the same exact thing. Please make them understand me, okay? That's raw, and that's human, and that's identifying hope. But by the time it filters through all the years of frustration and exhaustion, it doesn't sound like hope. It sounds like a demand. Fix my partner. Make them less defensive. Make them stop shutting down. Make them. And honestly, I get it. When you've been hurt for so long, it's incredibly easy to make your partner the villain of your story. The moment you enter therapy with that fix my partner mindset, we've already hit a wall, because that mindset carries a relationship killer with it: contempt. Okay? It says, I'm not just mad at what you did, I look down on who you are for what you did. Okay, couples therapy is not about grading your partner's behavior. I'm not here to hand out individual report cards and decide who's winning or determine who's the bad one in the relationship. I'm also not here to decide who wins an argument or not, because what happens when one of you wins the argument, the relationship is the one that loses. And who's my client? That's right, the relationship. When I say the relationship is my client, I don't mean that in some cute therapy way. I mean that very practically, okay? Because if I only focus on one of you, I miss the system that's actually causing the suffering for my client. For example, let's say one partner constantly brings up issues and the other is constantly shutting down. If I only focus on the partner that might bring things up, I might say, you need to stop coming into these situations so hot and use something called the gentle startup. And maybe that's true. And if I only focus on the partner shutting down, I might say, you need to communicate instead of disappearing. And that also might be true. But couples therapy is not about handing out blame, because the real issue is what is happening between you two during these arguments, not the actual argument. One partner brings up a need, but it comes out as criticism. The other partner hears criticism, not the need, so they defend themselves. Then the first partner feels unheard, so they push back harder, trying to make their point heard so that partner can really empathize with them. Then the second partner feels even more attacked, so they start shutting down. First partner is feeling abandoned, so they get louder, and now both of you are absolutely convinced that the other person is the problem. It's not about focusing on one or the other in couples therapy. It's about the whole, not just about who said what, not just who started what, not just whose tone was worse. I'm looking for that exact moment the conversation stops being between two people trying to understand each other and starts being two people trying to protect themselves from each other. Because once you're protecting yourself, you're not communicating anymore. You're defending, accusing, and withdrawing. And once we're in that state, we're no longer listening. You like each other. You got married because you kind of like each other. Why not buy into and give each other the benefit of the doubt and learn how to talk better? Yeah, there's sometimes I'm going to tell you to do the gentle startup, or there's going to be times to tell you to express that you need a break from the conversation. But it's not about that one person. It's about both of you doing these things for the betterment of the couple. Once we're in that state, you start withdrawing, you start defending. And once we're in that state, we're no longer listening, we're reacting. And that flip from listening to reacting happens very, very quickly sometimes. That's what couples therapy often slows things down. Annoyingly slow, I know, because productive conversation requires intentionality. Because the goal is not to make one person win the argument or to even stop arguing. The goal is to help understand the system that keeps producing the same pain and changing it. Because the goal of a healthy relationship should not be to never fight. Surprise, you're gonna fight with your spouse. That's not a big deal. That's normal. Honestly, the goal is to learn how to fight right. To learn how to fight right, we have to talk about another illusion couples come into therapy with. Couples sometimes assume that in one session, we're gonna dive into the hurt from 5 years, patch that up real quick, and bang, everything's gonna be fixed and fine. But we're not doing that. See, when a major hurt or betrayal happens far in the past and was never repaired, it's no longer just in the past. It colors all of your interactions and arguments in the present. Once a couple is in that state of resentment or negative sentiment override, we have to start with the present day, okay? We have to do damage control. Think about it, right? If we're struggling to have a civil discussion about something mundane, how the hell do you expect to have a conversation about a past hurt that has stuck with you for so many years? Couples work is slow. It's like you're lifting weights. You have to practice benching the bar before you throw some heavy plates on it, right? Otherwise, you're gonna get injured and be unable to practice even the bar. I hear you, okay? You're exhausted with the suffering and you desperately want a quick fix. But slow down for a second. What is the actual fix you're yearning for? It's a feeling of appreciation, right? You want safe communication. You want to rebuild that trust that you feel like was lost. And these are all things we can work on in the present without having to dig up the past. Once we are stable and comfortable with our skills today, we can use them to try and repair the past. Let me be clear. The work that we do in the present, even on the most mundane topics, doesn't mean it's gonna be easy. Honestly, it might even feel worse for a while because we're gonna strip away those comfortable defenses that you've become accustomed to using and reforge them in a way that is healthier for my clients, the relationship. And look, I understand the reason you use your defense mechanism is pretty clear. They work. Otherwise, you won't keep using them, okay? Shutting down kept you safe from getting yelled at. Getting loud made sure you weren't completely ignored. And avoiding a topic kept the household at peace. But peace is not the same thing as healthy. Avoidance doesn't cure resentment, it preserves it. It's like putting it in the freezer and keeping your pain nice and fresh until the next time you get reminded of it. And then it's gonna come drudging up in every other conversation. As a clinician, I genuinely view my job as more of a dance than anything else. My role is to learn about you and your partner's steps and pay attention to how you two flow with each other in our sessions. In our sessions, we're actually going to go deep enough in these discussions to let some of those messy patterns emerge. Then pause, coming back up, regrounding ourselves, orienting ourselves to the mission at hand, and then we're going to go back in. We do this to build a tolerance, building comfort within each of you to have an increasingly more and more difficult conversation with each other. This is what we call state-dependent learning. Okay, honestly, I kind of do want to see you get a bit triggered in session. That way we can learn about it in action and what we can do about it in that moment. Once I see myself interjecting less and I see you guys doing the work outside sessions and without me having to interrupt in sessions is when we can start resurfacing the past hurts, but in a very different way than what was done in the past. In a way that you are both able to express yourself so that your partner is receptive and listen to your partner that isn't like you're preparing for a rebuttal. Are you curious about what that will look like? The thing that most couples miss is that couples therapy is not just about talking about your problems. It's about practicing how to talk about your problems while your nervous system is activated. Okay, that's the difference. Anyone can communicate well when they're calm, well rested, emotionally safe, and not pissed off. That's not impressive. What I care about is what happens when your partner says the thing that hit a nerve. What happens when you feel criticized? How about when you do feel dismissed? Or what happens when you feel like they're parenting wrong? That is where therapy work happens. We want to build rules of engagement. The first rule is to talk about the stem, not the petal. I've said it a lot of times before. A lot of time when we like to argue, I like to relate it to a flower. The topic we're talking about is like the petals of the flower. It is pretty, it's in the face, and it's very clear to see. And then the stem of the flower is about the need or the hurt coming out from that argument, okay? And then the roots of the flower are the deeper hurts it ties to, childhood patterns, past relationship. Talking about the petal is gonna elicit defensiveness because it comes across as a character attack whenever you talk about what someone else did or didn't do. So don't talk about the petal, talk about you, talk about the stem. The stem is the need or the hurt being affected, okay? This changes everything. Instead of you never do the dishes, it becomes I'm feeling alone right now and I need help with the household needs. Do you hear the difference between those two sentences? One is an accusation, the other is a confession. It's an opportunity to connect and to be heard. The second rule is to fire your defense attorney, okay? When your partner brings up a criticism, do you automatically start trying to disprove what they're saying or start listing times when they did the same exact thing? Is the first thing you say after your partner finishes talking to push back or offer a fake apology? A good tip, if your apology includes the word but in it, it's not genuine. To fight right, you have to silence that defensive voice and instead act as a curious, emotional investigator. Its job? To be curious about what emotions your partner is expressing. Not just mad or sad. Go a little deeper. Try asking, I can hear how hurt you feel. Tell me more about what you're feeling here. Yes, this feels unnatural, or like you're agreeing to something you don't actually agree with. But you don't have to agree with an emotion to empathize with it. The last rule of engagement I like is to establish an emergency circuit breaker protocol. Because yeah, we do want to develop some state-dependent learning. At the same time, you have to be aware that once you're flooded, your thinking and empathy part of your brains are shut off, okay? When your heart rate is above 100, 110, or above 15 of whatever your base pulse rate is, your frontal lobe, your thinking brain, shuts off. It goes into fight or flight. Your amygdala, the emotional center, takes control. Okay, so we want to slow that heart rate down and help bring our frontal lobe online so that we can actually engage with our partner effectively. You and your partner need to have a safety plan in place for when one or both of you do get flooded. Okay, you need a circuit breaker, and that break needs to be from each other. I mean, you just got off at the other. So hanging around with one another doesn't sound like too much of a good idea. Your body needs at least 20 minutes. Okay, that's how long it takes at least for your cortisol levels to go back down to like a normal state of what it typically is. But recall what I said about avoidance, right? Exactly. We don't want this break to become avoidance in disguise. That means whoever initiates this circuit break needs to establish a clear time to come back to the discussion. So let me know below, what's a common conflict you and your partner constantly have? My name is Mike Shahade, and I'm happy you're here. See ya.